All right. Good afternoon. Greetings from Uganda. How are we doing? Good morning to you people in the US. Welcome to the Uganda Diaspora Show. And we are looking at a very interesting conversation today. It's 2 weeks since the terror attack on Kasese, the school in Kasese, where about 6 of them were kidnapped and a dozen others, killed in that heinous attack. One of the deadliest attacks Uganda has experienced since twin bombings. If you remember, we had twin bombings back in Kampala in 2010 that killed about 76. And here we are yet again experiencing even worse, because these are children that were kidnapped, these are children that were killed. And we are blaming the ADF. Well, the ADF seem to be the people that actually carried out this attack. We know what has been going on. We're going to get into that. But today, I'm glad to have Francis Kamhanda. It's good to have you again. Glad to have Miriam Chomgasho. So it's an honor to have you. And of course, Simon Mulongo. We're very glad to have you. Miriam, I had you call him honorable. I need to be clear. I'm not appreciating or recognizing the honorable in his right stature.
Is a former MP. He can introduce himself. He has so many titles. Yes.
Simon, it's an honor to have you. And if you could quickly tell us a little bit about yourself before we can dive into our conversation.
Why do you start with me and not start with us colleagues? Because they're the ones I will need to know more than you should know me.
Yes, colleagues.
But of course, I'm Mulongo Simon. I have been an ambassador as a special envoy with the African Union Commission. I worked in Somalia and also at the headquarters in Addis Ababa. Then before that, I was in 9th Parliament. Before that, I was the director of the Eastern Africa Standby Forces, which is part of the African Peace and Security Architecture, and so on and so on. So I don't want to bore colleagues.
We're glad to have you, Simon.
Call me just what you are. Even Simon. Calling me Simon is good.
Fantastic. My name is Lynn Komjish. I'm your host this afternoon, come morning, for those of you in the US. Now, we see that from what we have been seeing is that it was a well-orchestrated attack on Rubiriha Secondary School in Kasese district on June 16th that left 43 people dead, 37 of whom were students, and has left the nation in shock and agony. Let's begin from there. And I want to begin from, and allow me begin with you, Simon, for one reason, because you have been part of the security system or the fabric of Uganda, security fabric of Uganda. You might have an idea or two. We know that there's heavy military presence close to the border with DRC. We know we have had Operation Shuja and many other operations taking place to wipe out weed out the ADF, not necessarily wipe out, but weed it out. How did this happen? Where were we? Did we not get intelligence in time? And what could be the details that probably we do not have that you might be privy to?
Well, I'm speaking as Simon. I'm not speaking for government. I'm currently a consultant in the areas of peace and security, and so I'll speak from my own knowledge and perhaps borrow from experience. The incident, this very unfortunate incident, definitely beat the security operators for them to have made a flashy attack, a long jump operation from the jungles of DRC into Uganda. And of course, taking advantage of the porous border and of course the terrain. Those who know Kasese, the topography through the mountains, either through Karambi, Kitolu, and coming down to Rubiriha, and managed to carry out the attack, mainly using machetes, except for 1 or 2 or 3 explosives which happened. And by the time the police were tipped, we have some disturbing information about how police were tipped. And then they referred the person reporting to another bigger police station, not themselves really reacting. And when the military followed up to the situation, the attackers had killed, burnt up the place and left, and in their trail killing even the locals, 3 or 4 locals. So definitely there are lapses here we can talk about. One is this was a surprise attack because it happened without intelligence information to alert the security people. Secondly, it looks like the population also was not aware, because most of the population who could have been aware, none of them reported per se until the attack, because the director of the school was informed by 2 people, one being a staff, a female staff, a matron, who managed to escape with her child, and she made a phone call to the director. So, so definitely the security forces, who are said to be not very far from the area, only learned about the attack when the people were about to leave or had actually left by the time they reacted. Back to you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that. You actually paint a picture of what could have happened. But now the question here is the security lapses. And I come to you, Francis Kamhanda. We know there were comments that security operatives, or security was somewhat aware. They had some sort of intelligence about, this is what I hear from the public, and it's not me, but it's from the public, that they were aware of a certain attack, impending attack, and they never acted on it. Now, we know that our security is one of the most funded. We know that it is available. It is on those border points near DR Congo. In the last few years, there have been quite a number of them deployed there. Now, Francis, in your thinking, do you think the security lapses are something to really go by, or there's still some more?
Oh, thank you, Lynn, and my fellow panelists and viewers and those who are listening to us online. I'll begin by saying that the problem is more than what maybe Simon is portraying it. Number one, Simon claims that we have a porous border. It is not only Uganda in the world that has a porous border, unless if Simon tells me we have to build a wall around Uganda. And the only way how we have to bridge the issue of a porous border is why the UPDF was coined by Act of Parliament, and it is constitutional that they will have to protect the sovereignty of our country and ensure that people and their properties are well protected. So if there is an issue of the porous border, then Simon is telling us that, look here, our security is at 0 or need to be revised. Number two, he talks of the terrain, that Kasese, or the area where they attacked, the terrain being mountainous and so on. We have a brigade called the Mountain Brigade, which means technically, by its name, that it is for that purpose. It is on the mountain. It knows how to navigate the mountain terrain. So equally like how those ADF can navigate the mountains. But I don't know how they picked of all names the Mountain Brigade, but I think that brigade in the Rwenzori region purposely is to map out and know how can we also navigate through this terrain in case an enemy was to use it as a weak point to come and attack us. So I don't agree with him there. And then he says the attack was a surprise. No, it was not. Why do I say it was not? Let's follow the chronological event of things. In January this year, 17 people were killed in Kasindi, which is technically about maybe 5 kilometers from Congo to Uganda. On the 11th of June this month, ADF came and killed people in the nearby town, which is technically like less than 1 kilometer to Uganda. Now, if we go back again, now why I'm saying it is deeper than that. When in June 1998, you remember there was an attack of the ADF on Kichwamba Technical College in Fort Portal, where we lost almost 80 and 100 were abducted. So that should be an eye-opener, that it's not the first time that ADF or even the Konyi rebels are attacking a school. It has been an issue that these rebels always target schools, not only in Uganda, but in Africa. You have heard of the Boko Haram and so on. So it is not easy. And any person, any security person has to study all these dynamics in Africa and then say, okay. Then secondly, poor planning. If you had gone to attack the ADF in Congo, in their bases, do you leave your house open? If you know you are operating amongst the thieves, let me say, and you want to defend your house, so you open your house and you begin chasing the thief and you leave your house open, and then you had projected that these thieves are so many. So to me, I say there is a lot. And where does that take us? Number one, because I have to salute the UPDF. These people are doing a great work and they have sacrificed their lives for our sake. But they are being frustrated somewhere. Number one, they are being misused. They lost public trust. Because during then, we would see soldiers and you would go to them, even greet them. But people see them, they run. And therefore, in as far as intelligence is concerned, which Simon said, you can't provide intelligence to a person whom you fear, to a person you have seen murdering people on the streets of Kampala, to a person you have seen shooting people during COVID, that because there were restrictions of not moving and somebody is moving, it's very hard to deal with that. And then that crumbles down their mandate in, I think, chapter 12, article 208 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. And then when it comes to mismanagement, all these other problems that we have been having, they stem from corruption, they stem from mismanagement, and then we lose trust in some of these. For example, if we go, maybe we shall be analyzing this. If we go to the parliament, what is the role of the parliament in as far as UPDF is concerned? Has it always been followed? Now, if you go to the border, which I happen to understand the dynamics of that border, I'm telling you the UPDF that are deployed in terms of supporting Uganda Revenue Authority, 24 hours, Lynn, they would rather catch you with the earrings that you are smuggling them. 24 hours, you can't cross with the earrings, even though around those porous borders. But now a person with a machete, a person with a bomb, a person with a gun, how did the person cross even when they can hunt down small things? So all this comes into, boils down into administration, because you know you are going to attack those people or to disband whatever, to dislodge them, they will plan a counterattack, and it is not the first time. And this, sometimes I ask myself that, do we have intelligence officers in the army? If the answer is yes, are they intelligent enough to carry out intelligent or intelligence operations? If not, then it draws me to, there is something that is wrong in as far as planning. I'm not an army officer, but in as far as planning, in as far as how operations should be conducted. Yes, I'm not a security personnel, but these flaws reflect back into the administration. Because we still have, by the way, Lynn, the Somalia question that we shall need to discuss heavily. Because this tendency of always throwing the dirt under the rug and then we move on is not going to help us. Thank you. That's what I can say for now.
Yes, indeed. And talking about the Somalia question, we were discussing it not so long ago and asking ourselves, really, is this something that the government should continue involving itself in, and for how long? And because we've had quite a number of issues with it. But continuing on this conversation, and Francis, you highlight very interesting issues there. Miriam, residents in Kasese are now really questioning how they got under this deadly attack, yet there's presence of a police division 1 kilometer away, a UPDF detachment 2 kilometers away, and a Muhoti barracks in Fort Portal on top of the UPDF mountain division to oversee the region. I mean, with all this, we know that if I could give us a bit of info here, because I'm getting some of the information here, and they're saying that Muhoti Barracks was created in 2021 and is home to 333 Mountain Brigade, tasked with security of Rwenzori sub-region. Brigade 113, Brigade 11333, which is Brigade 3, is currently in North Kivu, as it was deployed to neighboring DR Congo in search of ADF militants in 2021 under Operation Shuja. Now, this security lapse has left the public in bewilderment, if I could use the word. And remember, the Omusinga of that area, Mumbere, was released a few days before this attack. It was actually close to 2 days. And this happened. Is it a coincidence? Is it a security lapse? Is it a normal reminder of what has happened previously? Or is this something we need to look into deeply as a country?
I don't know where to start. I mean, but I think it's several questions here, several issues to look into. But let me point out about what everyone has already commented about, the security lapse. And it's not only about the Kasese attack. Francis said about Somalia, and like the president admitted, the attack was as deadly as it was because of lapses, which attributed so many issues, including corruption in the UPDF. So what we should be questioning as Ugandans is UPDF in a good condition? Is it a collapsing army like all other state institutions? Because corruption is so far destroying most of public service institutions. So is UPDF following other institutions into that category of the corrupt and the dying or the weakened because of corruption? And going back to the structures which could have prevented the attack, Lynn, you know that we have LOCs. Forget about all these military installations which are everywhere and are questionable why they couldn't do something. But we also have the LOCs, we have the GSOs, we have all those are security agencies, and they are supposed to feed into the main security apparatus of the intelligence, the UPDF, and all its other sister or brother agencies. So if at all the police were sleeping on job, what about the GSO? What about all the LOC officials? These days, everyone has a mobile phone and they could communicate. Is there any network working, or everything has collapsed? So you get the impression that if something was active, there could have been some response somewhere which could have mitigated the damage done. But what you see is that nobody's talking about the LOCs, nobody's talking about I mean, all the attaching security agencies, like you know them, the DISO, the GISO, RDC, waiver, all those, and Kasese being part of being part of Uganda, which shares the border with a volatile neighbor, the DRC Congo, and everybody knows that it's a sensitive security area, it should be on alert, like highlighted, and every other concerned party should be on alert 24/7, because ADF is across the border, and we know it's a porous border, and we know anything can happen. And as Francis highlighted, the chronology, it's like the attacks have been going on since this year started. So the attack on the school wasn't the first one. But when those attacks happened, what was the response? What were any preventive mechanisms put on ground? Does even anybody care? Do people care about other institutions which could be open to such a terror attacks, like religious groups, like other schools, like marketplaces, places where people congregate? And are there any security mechanisms protecting those people, or there to quick response kind of mechanism to inform people in case something shows up? I think what is happening is like we are all like relaxed, like I don't know whether to say that the government no longer cares. I mean, UPDF is busy fighting in Somalia, busy fighting in DRC, busy somewhere else. They can even be deployed in Sudan or any other country. But what about security back home? Who is protecting Ugandans back home? And the constitutional mandate of UPDF, first and foremost, is to protect Ugandans and their property and secure our borders. So if we have a porous border and we don't see that protection happening, who are we going to hold responsible? Is UPDF going to get away with it? Like, and what should we expect tomorrow if the ADF or any other terror attack comes up to attack any other Ugandan from any other part of the country? It doesn't even have to be Kasese. We recently saw they call them the machete attacks in Masaka. We saw, all those funny security things happening, thugs attacking police stations. First of all, the police is depicted as weak across board, and you don't know what happened because the president had an excuse that the police was weakening security-wise, and that's why he put soldiers in charge of the police. And actually, the whole police is headed by the military instead of, the mainstream police officers. So if the police is not armed, empowered enough to protect the people on ground, who is going to do that? And if the security agencies, all of them, the way they are, the barracks, all the stuff you highlighted, we are not good enough to protect the people. You have an alarm that kids are being attacked in school, and then the response comes hours later. The response not only in military prevention, defense and chasing away the rebels, but response even in first aid, response even in securing neighborhoods, because those rebels could have left school and attack another area and another area and another area. So how many kids' lives could have been saved if the police reached that school with ambulances, with first aid mechanism? Because we understand that there are so many students who died due to injuries that could have been preventable. And what if ADF left the school and attacked another school? How much damage could have been done? And all these things. Actually, I think even terrorists are very kind to us that they are not even destroying much more than we see so far. And that's a worry for all of us as Ugandans right now.
Yes, Miriam, very key issues you highlight there. And I want to believe that at least people watching will try to think through what is happening and how best to deal with these issues. I'm glad to say we have been joined by Helen. Helen is a writer. Helen, we're glad to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. Now, we are looking at Kasese, the aftermath of the terror attack and the return of the Renzururu King Mumbere Mumbere there, and it was just two days after the attack. His release happened just 2 days before the attack, and people were actually questioning and saying, "What a coincidence! Is this something that could have been avoided, or are they sending a message?" Actually, somebody was saying, they were saying that how very convenient for such an attack to happen just after the release of the Mumbere, who was actually heading there finally to his home, his place, his kingdom, and it happened just there. So Helen, if you're with us and you have you okay? Yes, I stay there. Right, Helen, what do you make of all this?
I don't know. I mean, I am as baffled as you are and as puzzled as you are about the timing of the attack, the brutality of the attack, and all the mysteries surrounding it, I guess. But I'm wondering if I could just ask, can someone tell me a little bit more about your group, which I guess I don't think I know about, although I've been with you before. But tell me a bit more about the Center for Constitutional Governance, and also who and where all of you are. Since there aren't that many of you here, maybe we could just introduce ourselves. And I wonder if any of you are phoning in from Uganda, or whether you're all in the diaspora. I guess you're the diaspora, yeah?
Helen, we are Ugandans, some in diaspora, and myself, I think, and Simon are back in Uganda.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, so this is the Uganda Diaspora Show. It is under the Civic Space TV, which is a baby of Center for Constitutional Governance.
Okay.
And so we get to have a conversation that affects both those home and those abroad. So we get to sit and have these conversations that are of national importance, really, in simple terms. So we have Simon Mulongo. Simon Mulongo is a politician. He's an international relations expert. We have Francis Kamhanda, who is in the US. He's also a political analyst and all those. We have Miriam Chomgasho, who is equally the same, and myself, the host.
Great. And where in Uganda are you? Are you guys, Simon and Lynn, are you in Kampala?
Yes, I am in Kampala. Simon?
Simon is.
Well, I'm in Kampala as well.
Okay, great. And you look like you're in a library. Are you a teacher by any chance?
Well, these are some of my literature that I've read in the past and even currently. I do studies. I'm doing a PhD, but also I'm a constant reader. I do like research. I do like reading. Great.
Sorry to ask so many questions, but it's very nice to meet you all. And you're part of the Center for Constitutional Governance, which is an NGO in Kampala, correct?
Yes.
No. I am a common researcher with them, and I'm a common guest. Many times I'm invited as a guest speaker, and I attend a number of their programs.
Okay, terrific. Right. I guess, I'm as in the dark as you guys are as to what is going on. But I'm wondering what the feeling is in Kampala, what people are saying and thinking, and if they feel free to say and think the things that they think, and what it's like, and what you're hearing about the attack in Kasese, and about the fate of the king, who I understand has not returned yet back to his home. He's still under house arrest, effectively surrounded by the SFC, I gather. Mm-hmm. So what else are you hearing, and so on? I'm curious myself.
Well, not much, Helen, not much. We're hearing more like what you're hearing, because we there's investigations going on, and so we cannot tell what exactly is going on. But that's precisely why we're here, to have a conversation on these things, and maybe help somebody out there to even understand what's going on. So yeah, we're not hearing much per se. Pretty much what you've had as well.
Yeah.
Right. So if we could continue with this conversation, allow me, there's been talk that that while we are blaming the ADF terrorist group, they talked about wrangles over that particular school. And this I'm quoting from BBC, they're saying First Lady Janet Museveni, who also serves as Education Minister, said there had been a conflict between groups in the district of Kasese who wanted to take it over and the non-government organization that built it. So she said that auditors from the NGO had been to the school the day before the attack. And so still investigations are underway to really determine exactly what happened. But now there are different, different explanations as to what could have happened. Now, Simon, if I could come to you, we're still looking at the role of our security apparatus as a country. And particularly in that area, the Rwenzori area, the borders with the DRC, and we know that there have been efforts in, weeding that place of ADF and all sorts of other, militia that are in that the eastern DR Congo. In your expertise so far, in your walks, in your work that you do, is this something we're ever going to get rid of? Because if there are porous borders and yet we have all the security lined up there, is this place ever going to be pacified?
Well, of course, you're asking very interesting questions, and we forgot to ask Helen to tell us who she is and what she is. But but back to what I had said earlier. But maybe before I go to that, because some very key questions were raised following my initial remarks.
Yes.
But there is no permanent situation. Definitely, there can't be permanent situation. Things have changed. Just like we've emphasized ourselves, we came from various generations, and we are not like the previous generations. Even there have been wars in this country. We've had wars after independence. In the 60s, the attack on the king, we had wars with the Idi Amin, we had wars, internal wars that brought into power President Museveni and his government. We've had 29 rebel groups attacking the government, and the situation has changed. So there's nothing like a permanent situation. I have every reason to believe that by the government going yonder strategically to work with the DRC government, that is one of the major reasons that will perhaps fasten the resolution of this border problem, where the rebel hideouts have been a thorn in the flesh for a long time. So we hope that with this operation working jointly with DRC, they will be able to eliminate the pockets of ADF with time. But back to some of the issues that were raised. Porous borders, that means that we don't have, for example, a wall like the attempt by President Trump to erect a very strong wall in the south with the border with Mexico. That's what it means by porosity. And you cannot place every meter some security personnel across the 242,000 square kilometers of the area of Uganda. I don't know the estimate of UPDF, that assuming there are 60,000, they cannot cover, they will cover, if you put one person per 10 meters, then they can cover, they won't even cover one side of Uganda. So porosity is exactly that the border has so many entry points which cannot be covered by the security personnel. And no country in the world has had its borders properly fortified. No country. And people can come in and go out and sneak in and go out. Yes, we can blame the intelligence team. Definitely the issue of Kasese, we must place the responsibility on the security personnel because that's their constitutional mandate. But at the same time, we must zoom harder into the whole apparatus. And I like what Miriam did bring out. What about the LOCs? But what about the community? Because security is a shared responsibility. Because these things happen everywhere. Even in America, I've seen so many attacks. I see the crime rates being so huge. In cities and towns that are above 100,000, 500,000, the crime rate is horrendous, where some thugs walk in with the rifles and kill school children. You can talk of the best intelligence system in the world being in America, but the things are happening. It happens in the UK, it happens in most parts of Europe, in France, we've had terror attacks in France. So not to use that as an excuse, but to say that let's not James Bond this situation and begin blaming wholesale without being very realistic. Yes, we take them to be responsible for it, but at the same time, the blame should be spread to all other actors, including the community themselves. Then lessons, of course, there are always lessons. I have security background, and every incident, every attack, we carry out what we call an after-action review. And a number of action reviews give us lessons, which in turn give us doctrinal lessons that we plow back into our doctrine and policy, so that we say this should not happen again. But just like a human body, you can treat this disease, tomorrow another one comes, or a similar one comes differently. They're always, because you're dealing with the people who are reading your mindset, who are reading your actions, who are watching your movements. These are trained people. The ADF is a trained military group. They're a terror group. And some of them are locals. A number of them are locals. They either speak Kinande from the Congo, or Uganda, other Ugandan languages. So they have a lot of knowledge in the area, and they may even have contacts who are sympathizers, who can lead them under the cover of the night to do all those things. So yes, I think as much as we can blame sorry, I got some disruption. We need to be realistic, and this is what I think we should be. We need to be realistic and try to make sure that we get to the bottom of it. Because if we go emotional and we miss out, then we're the leads towards finding a solution. Finally, the issue of the king. I wouldn't want to, in my own assessment, I've not connected because I don't have a solid link between and the attack in Kasese, because the king had not set foot on the ground yet. Court had just cleared him, and this kind of planning is supposed to have taken quite a lot of time to master the movement of the UPDF and other security apparatus, to make links with their cells in the area, and to be able to do the timing that they will find the target group, if there are students, that the students will be in, and that they have done the geography and everything about where the kids are living and whether there's security and so on. So it must have started much earlier, before even when the king could have been planned to be released either by court or something like that. So to me, I don't think they're linked at all. Back to you.
Right. Thank you so much, Simon. Francis, any reactions to that? Or Helen, we did ask, Simon was asking, you did not tell us about yourself, but you were asking about us. If you do not mind, please, could you kindly?
Sorry about that. I thought Miriam had introduced me, so I will reintroduce. I will amplify what she said, I guess. So that's why I didn't introduce myself, and I apologize for that, Simon and everyone, in the first place, for not making my own identity as clear as possible. I was invited by Miriam to join this group this morning, and I am a writer and a teacher. And I've been writing about Uganda for many years, and I started traveling to Uganda back in the early 90s. I worked as a molecular biologist, actually, at Balago. I was a biochemist then, and I worked on an early AIDS project to try to help with the early stages of a very early AIDS vaccine project a long time ago. And we thought that making an AIDS vaccine was going to be easy. As you all know, it was very difficult. And I ended up not working on AIDS vaccines anymore, but sort of switching to more public health and political topics. And I got very interested in the country and made many friends there, and have written quite a bit about the insecurity in the country, human rights in the country. I've written a book about Uganda's recent history, and I also have written numerous magazine articles also about, particularly about the human rights situation in the country. So very nice to meet you all, and let me know if you have any questions.
Right. Thank you so much, Helen, for that. Sorry, your network keeps breaking, but I want us to, now that you actually speak and tell us that you've written about the security and human rights situations in Uganda, when you look at the incidences that have been happening over the last 2 years, what do you make of all this?
I think they're kind of consistent with what's been going on in the country for the past 37 years, actually. I think for a long time, very similar things happened in northern Uganda during the 1980s and 90s and 2000s. But people really in the South didn't hear about that much, nor did people outside of the country, except in the kind of networks of those people from that region who were affected by them. So I actually don't feel that much has changed, to be honest. It's just that more people know about it and more people are aware of it. And it's a very, very heartbreaking situation.
Right. Thank you, Helen. Francis, back to you. You've heard from Simon and you've heard from Helen. And because right now, as we speak, Kasese has become such a delicate place. And most importantly, the Rwenzori region has become a delicate place because we know it is facing threats from the ADF. We know it is facing threats from other militia within the eastern DRC border and inside DRC. We know our military has gone into DRC to pacify the area, but we still see that this is backfiring somewhat, not entirely, but it is in a way. And so the question remains, or do you actually agree with Helen that this has been happening and this is not news anymore?
Thank you, Lynn, and Miriam and Simon and then Helen. Simon alluded to that since independence, we have been having a series of political instability or wars going on. Helen is also confirming the same, that not much has changed. And I have also said when I in my opening remarks, I was saying that if we can only pick out the ADF incident attacking schools, I narrated a series of events, chronological events from 1998 on the attack of Kichwamba Technical School. And then, but for me, if we are aware that the Eastern Congo has over 200 rebel groups or militias operating there, what lesson do we learn as Uganda? Even in an event, I'm not opposed to going there to help them out or to go there and fight the ADF from the source. But I'm about the structural problem. What was our strategy? In an event that you are going there, what do you think, like Simon has said, those are human beings, they also plan, they monitor. So what was the UPDF thinking that as we go there, in case they organize a counter-attack, what are we going to do? In case they decide as one of the tactical ways of fighting to come and disorganize you from the base, in this case, which is Uganda, what are we going to do? And I do tend to agree with Mariam that all this is, there should be a failure right away from our structure. Either in UPDF, how it is governed and managed. I'm not a security expert, but also from the corruption that is taking place. Now, where things get mixed is what Simon, I don't know whether it's you or Simon, where now the Minister of Education takes over the role of the spokesperson of defense, or the advisor on what happened and what should be done. Generally, a statement should have been made by either the Minister of Defense in collaboration with the security operatives to see what is taking place. And then when they jump in to link it that the school had their own wrangles and so on and so forth, no, that is shying away from the problem. That is shying away from the problem. The problem still exists. There is a systematic failure or collapse in government. Now, Simon talked of, and Miriam, that security issues is an issue that, and intelligence that needs to involve the civilians. Yeah, they talked about the structures, the local structures of government, like the LOCs, the GISO, and so on. I absolutely agree. But what I said is that in a situation like Uganda, where you have some security operatives, including the police, tormenting Ugandans on trivial issues, believe me, they cannot give you intelligence that you need. If you know that is your first front line, that they will tell us who are the bad people. Even when they see them coming with maybe guns and so, they will say again, the people who normally, the soldiers are coming, the ones who normally beat us, they will go into hiding. They will not even take time to know, are they our soldiers or not? But because we have created, first of all, I would say, Uganda security has created terror and fear within Ugandans that you can't boldly come closer to them. We still give them a distance because you don't know what is going to happen. And because of that, viewing them from a distance, even when rebels come, people will view them from a distance and they will not tell whether they're the genuine soldiers or not. I think that is what needs again to bring back the relationship between either the police or the army with the common person, to be able to get information as fast as they can. Because when we say the porous border, again, Simon is insisting that, yes, I agree, we can't plant a soldier everywhere, but there should be a strategy. Like, what is our strategy on a porous border as a country or as UPDF? Because I'm not a security expert, or as police, they should come out and tell us. During the past, we used to have all these sensitization, community policing, they would come, the vigilance, and they would come and tell you. But now when you find a GISO, because even they don't give him fuel, they don't facilitate him, he's using the motorcycle they gave him to begin ferrying sacks of charcoal to go and sell them. Then you think that one will provide security or knows what is even taking place in the country? Let me give you a simple scenario. What do you think an LOC chairperson will think of when the government decides to buy for them bicycles, but one person at the top decides to eat the money and no bicycle comes to an LOC one? When they are reading stories in the newspaper, forget during the past where LOCs were never educated. These days they're educated. They even access information. Where somebody has embezzled billions of money, then you expect this LOC to work for you at a free cost. He has to pay fees for children and so on, that for him he's just there overseeing and informing government. I don't know what kind of logic is that. So what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is the whole system, the whole structural system of government has collapsed. And it's because we don't want to admit and start from there. And now, if UPDF has been used to fighting conventional wars, times have passed, things have changed. Like as I said during the other show, that I do agree the UPDF can win a battle, but it is now so weak that it can't win a war. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis, for that. You actually hinted on something you did hint on a while ago on the strategy. What is the strategy? You were questioning the strategy the UPDF has over Somalia and its AMISOM operations. Still, you're questioning the strategy the UPDF has over Operation Shuja and the other operations going on in DR Congo, the eastern region of DR Congo. And it brings to my mind what actually most people have been talking about, and the public raising these questions. They're demanding for accountability from a well-facilitated defense sector, and which we know that this financial year, starting today, has classified budget of about 2 trillion Uganda shillings. Now, this classified expenditure has usually been a fig leaf for intelligence operations and high-grade defense equipment, only known to the highest authorities in the state. And the people asking, you have all this at your disposal and you still let our people die. You still see all these attacks happen and you see our soldiers die in Somalia and so on and so forth. So Miriam, I ask, is it time for us to actually ask for this classified budget accountability? And with all this money that goes into security, really, as a state, are we being honest to our people? Are we being realistic in portioning such huge sums of money, yet we are still questioning our security?
Yeah, Lynn, it's our duty as citizens to demand accountability from the government, especially the security sector. And yes, the security sector in NRM government for the last so many years, 30 plus, has been taking the lion's share of the Ugandan budget. We know they are well equipped. We know their capacity is good enough. That's why they are able to even export the UPDF soldiers to neighboring countries like Somalia and DRC to go and protect the people there. So there is no excuse whatsoever on why they failed to protect Ugandans within the Ugandan border. Simon said that the terrorists are very sneaky and anything can happen. Yes, anything can happen, but what is the effort on ground? Can we see you trying so hard? And if you fail, we would say that at least they've tried. Not the lukewarm response we see from the Uganda police, where someone reports and they send you to the next spot. The military barracks is there. I don't know what they are doing. Are they sleeping? Are they drinking and partying away? Or they are on watch and doing their constitutional mandate? So all those questions, yes, it's our duty as citizens to ask them. And if we don't push for accountability, who is going to do that? And so far, UPDF and NRM government and your President Museveni always has accountability on the conduct of his security forces, on his failure to protect Ugandans, and on the plan, the way forward. What is he planning to do in order to ensure that such attacks don't happen again? There have been series of attacks like Francis highlighted earlier. I don't want to go back to that. But I want to relate to the previous history of the Kasese region. When the king returned, or even the king himself, and the reason he was in prison, was the issue that was happening there was UPDF attacking Kasese, the kingdom specifically, and destroying it, destroying all the structures, killing more than 200 people, and so many unaccounted even today. And we didn't see any accountability from the state even after that. Same way, we don't see any accountability in the previous attacks and the previous attacks from this squad attack, where the community members have been killed. What comes to my mind, I know it could be overstretched imagination, but is NRM government biased towards Kasese region? Like they don't pay due attention to such an area which borders a porous security country like DRC. Do they care really? Or do they still them? Does NRM still see them like, rebellious opposition people who don't deserve attention from the government? We know the way NRM 7 acts, if you don't vote him, he openly tells you, you won't even see development projects. Does that extend to the security? What attention has the government given to that area, given the sensitive nature of that community being on the border with Democratic Republic of Congo? And very recently, even Rwanda government has been an enemy number one of Uganda. So, and it borders in the same area. So Kasese should be a high sensitive, a high security sensitive area that deserve more than it's getting. And we don't see that. Even if they are not telling us, but even the actions are not showing attention that it deserves as a community, as part of Uganda, and as a government doesn't show that it really cares so much about protecting the people there. So if you've been following the news, it's right now, after the school attack, not after the community attacks that have been going on. That even the LC3 chairmen are telling you, the government is now telling them, activate your security apparatus. So what have they been when the villages were being attacked? What have they done on the previous attacks, even in this year, these recent attacks? What was the response? What mechanisms did they put on the ground? And you even question yourself that suppose they did more than what they did something in preventive measures. Would this attack on this school, would it have been avoided? Because if the terrorists attacked one area 2 months ago, and today they are still attacking and killing people, and we see the police is badly equipped even to counter that and come up to the rescue, even for first aid, that shows you are not giving serious attention even the previous events that are happening, and you are not prioritizing that area as a security sensitive area that should be given your attention. And if the king, in my view, because the cultural leaders are there to protect the people, and they are so more connected to the people, if there was cooperation between the kingdom officials or the cultural leaders on ground with the police, and they are doing something called like civil military relations, community policing, where the police communicates to the people, and the people easily access the police and the security agencies, like Francis highlighted. There is apathy. Most Ugandans fear talking to security agencies because they are going to grab you opposition, and that area being a highly opposition area, maybe that could also explain the distance between the people and the security agencies there. And it's really unfortunate, and you also don't know like what is going to happen even after this school attack. ADF is it going to invade and attack another school or another community, a large community establishment? Since we haven't seen enough response from the previous attacks, enough mechanism on ground, we don't see much effort from the government. And even the statements that the president and the first lady, Minister of Education, they are putting across were more, I don't know, like whom it may concern, kind of, they are so more lax, like they are not trying hard, really, as if it's something to be dismissed, like it wasn't that much of a big deal. Yeah, the response, we saw a lot of the the security officers camping there, but the official statements coming from the people responsible are not strong enough. They don't show the commitment commensurate with the problem on ground. And you wonder what if those people are really safe, even with the deployments that are being talked about that are going to be implemented right now. Back to the king, I think going forward to the kingdom, whether the king is has capacity enough right now. But I think the government should try to look back at empowering local community to protect their own people. If they don't want to go through the local kingdom, at least let them go to other structures. They could be the LOCs, they could be church, it doesn't matter. In northern Uganda, they were using what they called the Arrow Boys. Why can't you put up vigilante groups and let the people protect themselves if the UPDF doesn't have capacity enough to protect the people? They can say use and maybe train them. NRM government trains people for nothing in military skills. Why can't they train the local people on ground to protect themselves, their communities? They can train the youth. They can train the LOC officials, at least in the information dissemination and maybe fast response, like that preventive kind of network on ground to inform whoever is there that something is going on. Because we understand the ADF is in the DRC, the border is porous, and so far the status is, for a long time coming, the ADF is still going to be in that area. We don't see them going out tomorrow. So if at all they still want to come back and attack Uganda tomorrow, they might still be able to cross that border and go through the security apparatus that is on ground and still come attack communities back in the country. So the mechanisms put on ground should be aiming at strengthening the communities beyond the government mainstream security apparatus.
Thank you, Miriam. And I was reading here that members of parliament were actually questioning what all this means. And they were saying that it has happened just after the release of their king, who had been incarcerated for no reason, but immediately released. His subjects are being killed like that. What are you trying to tell us? I'm quoting the members of parliament. Do you want to again frame up the king? And, he was arrested for related charges of terrorism and the like. And it is a very disturbing development in as much as we're waiting for accountability, which will never happen. Well, too bad to say, because we've had this over the years, and you have alluded to it, Miriam. We have been here before on Civic Space TV talking about the same issues of accountability. We saw what happened in Kampala not so long ago. We saw with all these security issues happening, we never get any sort of accountability. And this brings me to you, Helen, and I ask the question of, you said all this is not new. And yes, we are looking for accountability. We never seem to get any of the accountabilities that we might ask from the security operatives. But in your analysis, as somebody who's studied, who's written, and who's shared about Uganda, in your analysis, where do you see all this taking us?
I don't know. I mean, it's very sad. It's very, very sad. I mean, I think I see it taking you nowhere, really, is the problem, and sort of utter stasis and a kind of gradual crushing of the Ugandan people while the rest of the world looks on and ignores the situation there. And it makes me sad, I have to say. It just makes me incredibly sad to see this. I don't see, where did Margaret go? I guess, I don't know. I guess I feel what breaks my heart is just how alone you guys are.
Too bad.
With it. Yeah. I don't really know what else to say. It just seems,
you just
grim.
said we are alone. That's where it leaves us. And this brings me to you, Simon. When we hear about the investigations going on, we also hear that the Army Commander Major General Dick Olum has said that violence was a way for the ADF to distract his soldiers from their pursuit of the militants inside DR Congo. Now, we know not so long ago that there were some ADF militants that were arrested, if I could say, and some actually fled. They were around the border with Uganda and DRC, and they were arrested at some point. Their equipment confiscated, and we know what's actually going on deep in the eastern DR Congo. But when the army commander says that it is a distraction for his soldiers, Simon, do you agree, or is it us who are being distracted?
I agree with General Dikolum, because the ADF are facing a lot of pressure in DRC, and we think that as analysts that they came over to Uganda, do some action or some act that will convey two messages. One is to show that they are operating on the soil of Uganda, and therefore the government can ease the pressures in Eastern DRC in favor of Uganda side. And secondly, to announce that they are still alive and kicking. This is a common decoy tactics that is employed by people in the battles. You can use a decoy to really derail or misdirect the enemy. So we think that could have been the case. But just to hearing my colleagues, first of all, I wish we invited the colleagues from government to be able to explain, particularly UPDF, so that we speak from points of facts from government. Some of the questions that are being raised.
I wish you knew how government people are rather unavailable on the weekend. They do not want to be.
Well, yeah, I wish we did, because some of these questions could have been better.
We did reach out. We did reach out, yeah, but they weren't available.
Okay, now I can also see a lot of pessimism. I'm not a pessimist at all. Whenever there is a challenge, I go for it. If there is a problem, I tackle it. Like the researchers do, like Helen does. If there is a challenge, you ask yourself questions and go ahead to research to find proper solutions. So I don't think that this action alone in Kasese, or whatever happened in the north with the LRA, then Uganda was dead, is dead, or there cannot be any hope whatsoever. No. The government has been able to resolve a number of similar cases before. As I said, we've had 29 rebellions against the government, but they've all been quashed. Whether you start from LRA, whether it is West Nile Bank Front 1 and 2, whether it is Itongwa, whether they've been quashed. The reason why ADF has been able to subsist is basically operating outside the borders of Uganda. And this is the reason why the joint arrangement with the DRC comes in handy. That we work together with the DRC so that they can eliminate this menace that is affecting both the people of DRC and Uganda. Actually, the ADF has carried out more attacks in DRC than in Uganda, because the attempt by ADF recently in Toroko, you saw what happened. They were all killed. And so really, to me, I want to say that I'm not a pessimist. I'm very hopeful that this ADF issue will be ironed out, just like LRA and other 29 rebel groups were ironed out. Secondly, the institutions of government having corruption. I'm not happy with the government I support that has this menace of corruption, and this we've spoken openly. It's the president, it's the members of parliament, and it's ourselves as citizens. We speak openly against corruption. But you know, with corruption, it takes two or more to tango. And this, as an ill, must be checked, and we must fight it by all means. But to say that corruption has eaten up UPDF, it is now a shell, it is now collapsed, I think that is an overstatement that is not backed by facts. UPDF remains a very highly professional force in the region, not just in Uganda's history, but in the region. I was the deputy head of mission in Somalia for 5 years or more. when I could compare the UPDF vis-a-vis other troops that had been contributed by other TCCs in the arena of Somalia. The UPDF is uncomparable. The UPDF is capable of operating in any condition very effectively. And we better speak like this as civilians and not speak like people who can face the UPDF in the arena somewhere, because then you'll know what UPDF is made of. So these incidents that we're talking about are a very unfortunate incidents. And we cannot, of course, forgive ourselves or forgive UPDF because of such happenings, because Ugandans died. But we cannot wholly blame the UPDF. No, we should not. And try to rate them down so much that as if they have now collapsed. I want to say that the budget that you're talking about is very high. But it's only high because you're looking at the Ugandan national economy. Compared to other countries, the budget of UPDF is just small. In the region, for example, Kenya beats Uganda. Check statistics in defense expenditure. The Sudan, the others, the many countries in Africa, Uganda, I think, is one of those very minimal, small defense expenditure. Yeah, in Uganda, yes, you see it as very high, but definitely small. Two, the technology that UPDF has managed to acquire is good, but it's not that sophisticated like you're trying to overplay it. There are many things that they don't have. I don't have to enumerate some things that I know are with some armies like in Egypt or South Africa or Nigeria, and they're not anywhere in Uganda because their costs could be exorbitantly high. But they've been able to do much more. Uganda is very safe, Helen. Uganda is one of the safest countries in the region. We neighbor countries in turmoil. Look at South Sudan, look at Sudan, look at DRC and other countries. They're in turmoil. We're not. Uganda is very safe. People can walk freely across the streets. Even at night, people go around their businesses. You cannot compare with some cities in the region. So these incidents that have happened, to me, they're isolated incidents. And whose reaction, and if I can reply to Miriam, may not be to our satisfaction, but they have been quite effective. Look at the 2010 attack by Al-Shabaab on Lugogo and Kansanga and Makindi. The entire group was nabbed. They got all the planners, the who planned for this and who participated in the attacks. They were all nabbed.
But you got scaring away.
Sorry about that. Yes. So to me, imagine for the government agencies to be able to identify, track down, and arrest the whole network. That's not a mean achievement. The ADF have made a number of attempts at activities in Kampala. In the year 2000, 2001, the attacks in Kasese in 2006, and even 92, 96, when they attacked Kasese, and so on. All those efforts were brought to nil. The attackers were either repulsed or neutralized. Those who operated in Kampala were picked, were arrested. I was an RDC in Hoima when the ADF came to operate in Hoima. Barely 3-4 years down the road, all of them were arrested and or killed. This performance is no mean achievement. Now, I hear some people trying to talk so well about where they are and so on. I've told you that even in very advanced intel communities like those of the Western countries, terrorism has been thriving there. There have been attacks on the American soil, not once, not Oklahoma, not the 9/11, and many others. We've had the UK experience, we have the France even recently, and so on. So I think that the government in Uganda, despite those weak areas, which I agree, corruption and challenges to the institutions, we must give them a praise for having performed exemplary well, compared to other governments that have not done much, like the NRM. Finally, the Minister of Education, why did she make a statement? Is she the rightful one? Who is rightful? You are also making statements. You are an individual, diaspora, a civilian, but you're talking defense. Why? as a citizen, the Constitution confers upon you rights to speak out. The minister is an officer of government. And what had been attacked was a school that directly falls under her mandate. And therefore she had to speak because she had gotten intelligence from her education system that maybe there were wrangles, and she had to speak out her mind. I've also picked some other, but the Minister of Defense spoke out. The army spokesperson, and who doubles as the spokesperson for defense, General Klaige, spoke very eloquently about the incident. The commander on the ground in charge of that area, General Dick Olum, has been speaking almost every day, day in, day out, about the follow-on actions which Miriam raised. Immediately after the military and the police were alerted, they actually went on the scene, all by the fact that those people had escaped, because they knew, they were conscious that they could be tracked. So they escaped well in time. But the military has done a number of things. One, they have managed to review the security situation on the ground. Secondly, they have even managed to get 6 of the terrorists out of the 30 or so that came to attack. And the following actions are still going on. And we hope they will get more. So the military have been able to react on a number of instances in Uganda that have happened. If you want to know the performance of UPDF, go and look at the story of LRA. LRA was almost insurmountable. And for almost half a century, they became a thorn in the flesh. They were backed by the Khartoum government. They supplied them, offered them training sanctuary, and so on and so forth. But the UPDF, including the communities, the police, the LOCs, managed to root out and destroy totally. And the whole force of over 26,000 of LRA, we can now talk of about 10 or 50, wherever they're hiding somewhere in Kordofan. So really, for us to underplay such a performance is not fair. Back to you, Madam Moderator.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you, Simon. You really are hitting it hard on the head and reminding us where we've come from. And you know, this reminds me of what we have been looking at as a country. And when Helen says that this is not news, really, this has been happening. It's a reminder from where we have been and what hasn't changed and what we hope could change, really. Francis, I come to you and ask, with these security failures in this terror attack in Kasese, and this takes me back to your strategy that you were questioning. There's critical people saying that there's need to revise the anti-rebel strategies that we have in the country. If you remember when we went into Somalia, when UPDF went into Somalia, when Kenya, well, the East African soldiers went into Somalia, you remember there was retaliation. And retaliation in Kenya, retaliation in Uganda. And so this brings me back to the issue of these strategies that we have, operation strategies that we have as a country. Do we need to review, as somebody's suggesting? Or is it us being a strong and wonderful army, and so we do not need any strategies to lead us into whatever it is we are, we're trying to work on, securing the people, securing the borders, and helping other states, secure their people and property?
Thank you, Lynn. And I think Simon has highlighted on so many other things. Simon, nobody is underrating the role of what the UPDF is doing. We do acknowledge, but we are saying their mandate, because they are answerable, and if we don't put them to task, then they will not perform. Nobody will come here and because of such an incident, and then we begin praising them. But we are also helping them in one way or another. Like, one of the things we have agreed is that corruption, and for sure corruption is eating also the UPDF. whether you are refusing that or not, but that is a fact. If you need that, we can discuss it as another topic at some time. We can delve into that. Lynn, what you were asking, okay, let me first talk about what Simon said, that you see in these wars, the ADF did the decoy and so on. Like as I said, I'm not a security operative. So in the planning of UPDF, didn't know that such a things happen, like a decoy, and how do you plan? So does that mean then if for ADF can plan and plan a decoy, then it means it is smarter than UPDF? Should we say so? Because for me, I think that in a war like this, and the level at which, and I do believe so, that UPDF is more equipped than ADF. And therefore, it should even know that such a decoys will be planned by the ADF. So our question is, what did the strategy of the UPDF is towards such a decoys? So that's where, for us, we are talking about. And then, yes, I agree that so many rebel groups have been quelled, as how Simon said, and so on and so forth. They have been ironed out. But we are saying, at what expense shall we keep quelling them out? And we are asking, what should be the smart move? So that we, because I know, because the good thing for you have been in security, your aim would be to take your soldiers at a battlefront, you bring them back with minimum casualties. So we are also saying, as civilians, as you provide security, or as you defend our sovereignty, it should be with minimum casualties on the civilians, but which we are saying has not happened. So that's what we are questioning. And as people in security, we are trying to help you to see what you are not seeing. By the way, some of these soldiers are our brothers, are our sisters. They tell us also the challenges they face there and what their seniors or what is in administration, but which you don't want to hear. And you are saying that our budget is small compared to other countries. Yes, we are not Kenya and we are not Egypt and so on. We are talking about Uganda. When Lynn talked about accountability, yes, whether it is 200 Ugandan shillings, that is what we can afford, but we also need accountability. Accountability does not only include how much was spent, but also how much we lost, like these lives. For government to just jump in and then gives each family the speed at what even they gave each family, 5 million, go and bury. Were they burying a problem so that we should not question and ask and even see how the nature of how these people were hacked? Were there some struggle that the children tried to fight and defend themselves? In that struggle, if there was a robust system, could they have come and saved some so that we don't have all the 41 children dying? Now, how is the ADF, its intelligence, being robust that they can come, map out, come, kill, have the luxury of even those who have locked themselves in a room, throw a bomb, as how the first lady was saying, and do all what? Do you think all that can be done in just 5 seconds? The answer is no. And that's where we are saying that what must have gone wrong, where we question the civilians, what would have been our role, but we also say what would have been the role of security. Now, Dick Olum, I agree, he came, but he came at a time when already damage had been done. It goes back to what we are saying. If maybe sensitization would have been there, that look here, we are going to attack the ADF. But remember, they will plan decoys. You just know you are not safe. And that message had been resounding like as one of the strategies. Maybe people along the board would have been so vigilant. For your own information, there is a lady that was out crying around 5 weeks before the attack. That look here, security operatives, she was, they would think it was trending on social media, even within Kasese. That look here, a number of mad people are appearing in Kasese. Those who you see that maybe the person has been mad for only 2 days. Just the person is still normal. He said, no, there is a problem, there is a problem, there is a problem. And nothing happened. So those are what we are trying to question, that we should agree. Saying that there is a failure in a system does not mean that the system or the UPDF is completely at zero. And I have said, as you said that, okay, maybe like equipment and stuff like that, we are not refuting that. And that's why I was saying that the UPDF should be vigilant, that things, they should move by the time, that things are changing very fast. So as things change very fast, we also have to be dynamic in the way how we are doing things. And that's why we're saying all this should have come. I'm not an expert to even tell the UPDF what strategy they should use, but I'm old enough to know that by virtue of how things are happening, either their strategy had an issue, is weak, or they did not have. So that's what at a layman's perspective, that's what I can say. And once some of these things, one of the strategies, if it included sensitizing the community and telling them we are going to attack this, but remember there will be a backfire and this is how we can deal with it, you would have helped the civilians to also help you. But I have, as I have said, and I will continue saying this, the UPDF and the police have put themselves in a situation that when we see them as civilians, we see them as terrorists, number one. And then communication dies. That is, I think that is the first even instrument that would help or can help anyone to succeed, regardless of how many equipment that you have. But if the communication is zero, and I have tried to link the communication between the civilians and government and all other these organs, which to me I see is lacking in the strategy. Then number two, as I have said, there are other issues. Let me give you an example now, Simon. Let me just reason like a typical villager. Now, when they constructed the roads, you remember? What should we say now? The roads the ADF would have problems in movement. Now the roads eased a quick movement of ADF to Uganda. So if it's so, and we had a strategy that for us to be able to reach the enemy very well, to respond, we have to construct roads in Eastern Congo. So what was the strategy of saying that in case we have an attack in Uganda, what is the fastest way to respond? I think, Simon, we need like some of these people, you know them, they need to look at the time frame. That is also a question. When the attack took place and the first people to respond and how they responded. So I think that is also another chemistry that has to be looked into, and what we are also asking ourselves. And of course, not forgetting that if we are to revise the strategy, it is very important that the UPDF, wherever they are, they begin involving the parliament. Because these are decisions that they are making on behalf of whether it is the senior command. I do agree that there are some of the things that may remain as their top secrets, but some of the things it is important to involve the parliament, who are the representatives of the people, so that people are in the know. If need be, once you have briefed these members of parliament and so on and so forth, perhaps they can go and tell their constituencies that, remember, this is taking place ABCD, but according to what we have been briefed, there is X, Y, and Z. But this system of always coming, maybe the decoy room and so on, they are doing postmortems. I think we are we should be far ahead of that and begin tackling these other issues. And it's not a problem. You can declassify some of these strategies so that we know, so that we should not be talking from the blue. Most people do that then we can also know. So that now I will not be coming from, because right away we are here in a bubble. Security operatives are operating in one bubble. We are also operating in another. Whether you like it or not, as these bubbles come together, they will knock each other and go apart, and nobody will have learned anything from the other. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Francis. Indeed, as we begin to wind up on this conversation, I want to talk. Helen, you are unmuted. Any comments, any questions, or any reactions to what has been said so far?
Yeah, thank you so much. I had a number of thoughts on the comments. Thank you guys, both Francis and Simon. I wanted to respond in particular to some things that Simon said, actually. I think we may have met before on this forum. I'm not sure, but maybe not. On the matter of the UPDF budget, or the military budget generally, not just the UPDF, but the security forces budget for Uganda, being not particularly large, I don't think we know what it is. At least I don't know what it is. There's a lot of secrecy surrounding the military budget in Uganda. We also know that during the 1990s, it was found that a significant fraction of the routine budgets of other ministries was being diverted to the military. And that was kind of, we just happened to find that out because the people talked about it and the scandal was revealed. We don't know if that's still happening. We know just about every other sector of government is seriously underfunded in Uganda. Everything from schools to the health system to roads, you name it. And a lot of money is sort of diverted, and where it gets diverted to, it tends to go to the security forces. We saw that, for example, with COVID-19 funding. As soon as COVID-19, it was immediately diverted hundreds of millions of dollars to security forces in advance of the 2021 elections. So, it's really totally up in the air as to what the military budget of the country actually is, or the security budget anyway. The other thing, as to whether Uganda is an island of stability in a volatile region, I think it's worth remembering that Uganda is part of the reason why the rest of the region, the other countries in the region, have problems. Except for Sudan, the rest of Uganda's neighbors were largely at peace until 1986, I might remind you, except for Uganda itself, of course. And we now know that the NRA and the UPDF and so on, and were in part responsible for the troubles that subsequently occurred in Rwanda and in Zaire, now Democratic Republic of Congo, and also that things in Sudan got worse after that. So, and that's really never stopped. I mean, the conflict in the region has never stopped as long as Museveni has been in power. So I think we have to ask some questions about that and look historically at what's going on. We also know that northern Uganda was at peace until, and eastern Uganda were okay until until 1986 or shortly thereafter. Yes, I don't know, but they may well have rounded up suspects in the Kasese massacre. But I think we still have to be a bit skeptical, because every time there is an unexplained murder or other atrocity in Uganda, there have been, or many other times, not every time, but many other times, really since for about the past 20 years, the security forces have rounded up suspects and tortured them into confessing that they were members of the ADF. Those cases have almost all, I mean, they've all, as far as I know, been thrown out of court. So, so we really can't have too much faith, I think, in what the military is doing right now when it comes to blaming the ADF, that the ADF is a convenient scapegoat for God knows what. We really don't know what happened there. And I would also be skeptical of the other explanation about the battle over school finances. That usually doesn't result in a massacre of children in a school, these sorts of things. It's not a very plausible explanation. It could be true, who knows? But I would be skeptical of that too until further evidence is produced.
Right.
The other thing to bear in mind is that people in the region say that they were, during this massacre, the children were slaughtered one by one. It took an hour or two. And that police posts, they had the numbers of the barracks. They were doing everything to try to get a military response during that time, and nobody did anything. And these forces were stationed just a couple of kilometers away. So I think this happened in northern Uganda too, during the Kony days, when the military would sit in its barracks during attacks on schools. So this is not really a new thing. So I really don't, I think we need to kind of wake up and be a little bit skeptical, even if some of you, especially those of you who are in Uganda, can't really say anything about this openly. Just keep an open mind. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Thank you so much, Helen. Miriam, we will, I think, conclude with you and on this conversation. Any reactions, any suggestions or comments as we move forward? And hopefully, if there are any comments or suggestions, use the chat room. But you could also speak after Miriam has spoken.
I want to start by responding to a few things Simon raised. Francis had answered a couple of them. But Simon, I would like to remind you that actually we recognize that in a UPDF of the past was effective compared to the UPDF of today. That's why we are saying what went wrong. If you look at the ground, the network, the security apparatus, Simon, you remember that in the past, no strange person would even walk in a village before the LOCs notify the police, before the GSOs question them, before everybody raised the antennas, and that person is verified until they know that he is harmless to the community. And that's how UPDF or NRA or whatever force name was called that force. That's how Museveni was able to secure Uganda for a couple of years. That's how even NRA was able to fight the Bush war without the super tech equipment they have today. They were a ragtag army, but they had very good civil military relations, and those are effective in eliminating terrorism, as we all know, because terrorists move clandestine, like underground. They don't go like the usual, I mean, like they're gonna come attack. You see, like in Ukraine and Russia, you know, like the armies attacking here, and there is a real war going on, conventional war going on. So the terrorism can be part of the community. Even the terrorists can be part of those villages that are that the school is located in. But how do you identify the chaff from the grain? You use the local people who know the people. That's why we even saying that the people are even saying that deploying foreign armies into Somalia to eliminate Al-Shabaab is not effective, because the Al-Shabaab are Somalis, and it will take the local people to identify them and either convince them to stop the terror attacks or report them to the responsible security agencies, or use their local means to protect their own people. So when the UPDF, the reason I was questioning the effectiveness of the measures on ground is the way they are talking today. So after so many attacks to the community since this year started and even last year, you still hear the LC3 chairperson saying that their security cells are not activated. And then you hear the so-called defense minister or representative of UPDF, decoys and Sempija, the honorable, telling people that please activate your security cells. After so many, after how many days are we going to wake up? So what were they doing before that? Why were they sleeping on job? So that's what we are questioning. We are not saying that UPDF has gone to the dogs, but the dogs could have come to UPDF, and somehow somebody has to be held accountable. You alluded to us that even the sophisticated countries like US and France have terror attacks. But let me tell you, when some terror attack happened in USA. For instance, today there is a public hearing of Parkland Police where there was a public shooting of students. The police are held accountable. They have to have a forensic audit of minute to minute of how they responded to the attack when the attack happened. And those lapses, whoever lapsed on the job, whoever was responsible for the death has to be held accountable. So who are we holding accountable in this lapse of security, in this attack on the school? Is it UPDF? Is it the police officers who never responded to the alarm that was raised? Is it the security officers of the schools who might have not put up enough security fence around the kids, knowing that ADF operates in the area? Is it the Ministry of Education, which should have supervised the schools before allowing them to have a dormitory hostel accommodating students and in an secure area where the premises don't look secure enough, and even the security that could have put on the school gates was not enough? Is it the first responders who are not on ground? And I think even UPDF or Uganda Police doesn't have anything called first responders. So if you are in a crisis, whether it's a fire or accident, you are on the mercy of God. Nobody is going to come to your rescue until the fire goes down, and then they come DNA identifying, we are identifying the death. And as Francis said, they give you money to quickly bury the problems before someone verifies or does the audit to hold them accountable. So, but what is more painful, and what I would like to highlight, Lynn, is how the country is so silent about the demise of our children, how the victims are not recognized, are not humanized and dignified even in their departure. We should be remorseful. We should give them a national mourning, and we should recognize that we have lost our children. The country needs accountability. We need to audit into what happened and what we could have done as a community. All of us are responsible for their death. We could do something as a community, as security agencies, as the government, as the local leadership. So I'm not saying that UPDF alone is to be held accountable, but all of us, we failed these kids, and we could have done much better than that.
Right, indeed. We could have done much better than that. We still need to do so much. As we wind up, I think if you have any reactions, this is the time. Simon, anything?
Yes, I like the way we are bringing it out. of course, the talk was that institutions have collapsed, including you. But back to this, the school, the reaction was quite fast, but not fast enough, because that very night, the police who came on the scene first, and then the military, and the pursuit started. And as I've said, some of the ADF bandits have been arrested, were arrested, 6 of them.
After murder? After they
of course, just like it happens in the US, they react after the murders. When the kids have been shot at in schools, school after school, people get guns and shoot children in school and the police come in with sirens after the shooting. After the shooting, that's when they come in with sirens. It happens in the US day in, day out. And the point is that, without universalizing these things, is that the reaction was such that it was too late. They came in after these people had just left, which is very unfortunate. But that was not a planned thing. It is a coincidence that it happened that way. 2, surely it is very hard to satisfy human beings. If there was no support from government to support those who had lost their dear ones, at least for burial, then they will actually be raising hullabaloo. But now that the money was raised to bury, they're saying, why was it raised too quickly? The Batoro say, yes, Mbumira, Miromuru, Mbechwa. So really, this becomes a dilemma, which is which. But the burial of these bodies that had already wasted, the bodies were wasted, they had to be buried almost immediately. So providing funds in a timely manner was something that we need to thank, but it was not to hide anything. The forensics had come in, and those bodies that were required to go through the DNA processes are up to now still ongoing, but those who have been identified have been given over to the next of kin. Accountability, financial accountability. We have institutions that track the UPDF accountability, including classified expenditure. We have a team in Auditor General's office that handles that. I was in Parliament and I was in the Committee of Defense, and part of the things we're handling and looking at were classified expenditure. So there's nothing that goes scot-free. In terms of scene of incidents, we have boards of inquiries that always take place. Whether in Somalia, whether it's back here, there are boards of inquiries. And Kasese, there's already a board of inquiry to look into that. And many of these soldiers in UPDF have been sentenced to death, which doesn't happen in the US. A soldier is never killed. They just either, they are never killed. I can tell you this, I can say it 100 times. In Uganda, we've sentenced many UPDF soldiers for being found guilty to death. And some of them are killed at the scene of incident where the communities have to watch them die. Now, LOCs, yes, truly the community in Kasese have been alerted. And if you can remember, the Deputy Internal Security Organization, DG, the Deputy DG, was making his movement along the Rwenzori ranges and alerting the communities and the population to be alert. I think some of these things are a lapse that happens naturally to us. Both the community and Miriam put it very well. We're all to take responsibility, though, of course, the high responsibility goes to those who are specifically responsible for it, like the security agencies. Why not use locals? Yes, even the CDF is local. The Chief of Defense Force of Uganda is a local. And so are other local operatives there. The structure there is of locals. But I want to buy the idea of local defense units. And as it worked up in the north, I agree with you. We've suggested it already to the government, and we did have it in the mid-2000s. We had local defense units operating the mountains alongside the military. But not because we have a vote of no confidence in the military, but as a matter of augmenting. They're called auxiliaries. Now, back to my sister, Helen. Uganda, since '86, has never attacked another country deliberately without cause. The issue of Sudan, they're the ones who started facilitating the enemies of Uganda. And it was nothing but hot pursuit. We're on the receiving end. The attacks were coming in to us. and we had to go back as a counter attack to South Sudan, at that time Sudan. DRC, there were negative forces operating there because it was a void, was safe haven for all these negative forces. Before we went into DRC, we have got attacks from DRC, Helen. Just, I have not looked at your books. I think I'll pick interest in them, and I may write a critique to see what it is. Rwanda, it was the Rwandese who went back, and they had a backlash from Habyarimana, who declared war on Kampala because these Rwandese were in Uganda and attacking Rwanda from Uganda. We had no interest of going to Rwanda. We were forced to go into Rwanda because of the declaration of war against Uganda. And the issues of Somalia, we went to Somalia simply because of the potential threat of terrorism in the region. The Islamic Union courts declared war to the region, and part of the caliphate to attack the entire global world, from Somalia to Alaska, as they said in their own words, and also to Solomon Islands to the east. What did you expect us? We had to nip the bud. We had to go and nip them in the bud before they would become a problem to us. So I think that the issues of accountability are there, financial, physical, and whatever. We have all sorts of institutions that are supposed to carry out accountability. Finally, we're not forgiving security apparatus for whatever happens to Ugandans. But at the same time, the responsibility of security is for everybody. We must give credit where it is due and hold them accountable where we think it is necessary. I think that Uganda, since the 2000 something, we don't have any aggression against Uganda in terms of frontal attacks and have survived. Uganda remains the most peaceful. In America, I've been to America, there are places where you cannot walk as a black person. There are many roads and highways where you drive as a black and you're shot at summarily by the white extremists, police extremists. It is not safe for me in America. It's much safer for me in Uganda than in the US. You can tell me stories about safety in America. No way. You can't. But in Uganda, I have the freedom to walk anywhere and everywhere, and I will be treated. Of course, there are excesses which Helen has touched, and those excesses must be criticized correctly. I know Lynn is trying to, she has not pointed a finger to me. She wants me to stop.
I have a question for you, Simon, before you go.
No, you cannot have if Lynn gives us more time.
Our students in other schools in the neighborhood and any other part of Uganda safe? Is the security around the schools enough to protect the kids in institutions?
That's a lovely question. I wish you were a mother, but you have reasoned as one. Surely, the security in schools, schools have been advised, particularly in this time of terrorism. When we got attacks in 2010, schools were given security guidelines, and a number of them have even employed private security guards and or using the police. But security can never be enough everywhere. Even in security installation, you find some people sneaking in or compromise some parts of it here and there. So, like that of Lubiriha, there was a security guard who was actually, I think, armed, but he was surprised and got killed. I think they identified him before he could identify the attackers. So there is security, there are security procedures, but they can never be enough. Sometimes these guys come and overwhelm the security apparatus, like some forex bureaus of late. We've had some forex bureau attacks, some petrol stations attacks by some unknown people. And then, of course, always from lessons learned, there are attempts to reinforce. But I can say nobody in the world can guarantee security, even if there are such measures which are revised from time to time. Back to you, Lynn.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Lynn, you are muted.
Yeah.
Lynn? My bad.
Yes.
I'm sorry. So I'm saying I'm giving us about 3 minutes for some reactions, and then we call it a day.
I could just, yeah.
Right, Helen, go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly, because some of that was directed at me. Thank you, Simon, for those. Yeah, we have problems in the U.S., but we're talking about Uganda at the moment, so we can talk about US another time, and I'm sure many people will have, at least, you know, more or less we can speak for the freedom to speak, which you guys don't have. And I understand that, and I understand you're in Uganda right now. So there are certain things you may not know or may not be able to say. But Museveni himself has admitted that he supplied the RPF and supported the invasion of Rwanda from 1990 on. It's well known that the RPF used Uganda as a rear base and was actually stationed in Western Uganda. And that various weapons that were used to nefarious ends actually came from Uganda. So, and Ari, the Sudan, the Sudanese government didn't start supporting Kony until about 1993. And before that, Uganda had been supporting and funneling supplies to the SPLA for at least a year or two before that. So, and that we all know that the ties between Museveni and Garang went way back. As far as the DRC goes, there was an attack on a technical school in 1998 from the ADF, but Uganda invaded, was part of, little known fact, but it was involved in the 1996 invasion with Rwanda, and was also, had been supporting Rwanda all along. So, and there is an International Court of Justice judgment which details a lot of what Uganda did in Congo, which went well beyond whatever retaliation against the ADF might have been necessary. I mean, they swaths of the country and occupied natural resources and so on. So in any case, I mean, there's a pattern here. I mean, if you look at what's happened in the country and what's happened in the region over a very long time, I mean, all of these are details, and one can contradict them or one can argue with them. One can argue with them, but one can't necessarily disprove them because they're on the record from so many different angles. And I think all of this needs to be borne in mind when we look at anything that happens inside the country or even in Somalia now. Anyway, that's all I'm saying.
Right. Thank you, Helen. Francis, in a minute, let's wrap it up.
Thank you, Lynn. I want to first laugh at what Simon said, that these bodies were buried hurriedly because they were wasted. And they got wasted so fast compared to those of Somalia that are not yet buried. Isn't that also those ones of Somalia? By the way, Simon, why I'm saying so, those who died in Somalia, I have two relatives who died there. We have not yet buried them. So because for them, their bodies are incorruptible, they can't waste very fast. And then those who died, the children, they were buried very fast because the bodies are getting wasted very fast. But anyway, let's leave that. But my concluding remarks are, I am encouraging all civilians in Uganda to be vigilant and always to speak out about this security, because it concerns us, all of us. We should not shy away from criticizing the security operatives where we feel they have failed on their constitutional mandate. Number two, Article 208, subsection 2, puts it clear that the UPDF is answerable, should be non-partisan and answerable to the civilians. Generally, they are supposed to be our subordinates rather than our masters. And that's why I'm using that to question them. Not because that I know much about security, but this is a constitutional mandate. And therefore, they should also go back and read that, the UPDF and the administrators who are involved, to know that we are using this, and they should listen to us and know, for them to be able to serve us, they should listen to us and know that we matter. Otherwise, if we were not there, they would also not exist. Then the other one that I would have to say is, it is true, the intelligence of the UPDF has to be beefed up. It has a lot of flaws, all those stemming from nepotism, stemming from the hegemonic rule by the president, because even when we say nobody should monopolize or own the army, Museveni on several occasions and his son have always said, my army. No, it is not his. It is for the UPDF. So that's why in most cases, they are dispensing their duties segregatively or without being mindful that they are supposed to serve as civilians and they are answerable to us as civilians. Then lastly, I will have to say that Article 210 of the Constitution, the UPDF and the command-in-chief, whether the president or whoever, should put it into consideration, because the members of parliament are people's representatives and they should always be consulted in any in most of the deployments where we are equally affected as citizens, if we have to respect the rule of law, if that is true, and three, if we are to build Uganda that is equal and serves every person in Uganda equally, regardless of their political and socio-economic status. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Francis. Miriam, I don't know if you're still burning with something, but we have fast spent our time and we need to get into the weekend. I thank you all for joining us. Simon, it was nice having you here for the first time.
No, there was something I need to answer because it's like one side against, and Miriam promised not to disturb me. Can I just say something? Because my sister Helen raised an important point, and my brother also said something. One about the Uganda and the neighbors. I want to remind my sister Helen that when Idi Amin was overthrown in 1979, a huge bulk of his forces escaped into the Sudan, and they reorganized and started attacks on Uganda. Juma Oris, the former chief of staff, the formation of West Nile Bank Front 1 and 2 were based in the Sudan. That's how it all started. All these rebel movements emanated from the Sudan, even before the birth of LRA, which started much later. So that one is just a reminder to you. Two, the other one was also the formation of other group from Congo. Some of the remnants of Idi Amin soldiers were based in Congo, and you should know that. And you are mixing the Hague judgment and whether Uganda is the one who invaded. We're talking about the sequencing of events. Who threw the first stone? And that's what, whether they committed crimes or they're clean, this is not the issue. Who threw the first stone? And the one of Rwanda, I told you clearly that it's the Rwandese who are in Uganda and who have been engaging the Habyarimana government to go back. And those talks failed. If you remember the Arusha Accord, Habyarimana concluded that the Rwanda is like a cup of water. It is full to the brim. He could not accept them back. And that's how they organized to go back. And they're not just Rwandans from Uganda. They're also from Tanzania, from Canada, from the US and other places. So we just was a knee-jerk reaction because Habyarimana believed that because some of them came from Uganda, he declared war on Uganda. And that's how we had to come in to defend ourselves, but also to help them accomplish their role. The rest, actually, we've been actually in hot pursuit. Then finally, on the issue of, I agree that accountability must be there. But you see, whereas the military is under civil authority, we mean civil authority meaning authorities. The president should be a civilian or must act in a civilian role. The cabinet and the ministers of defense are supposed to be like civilians as much as possible, and so on. But of course, they should also respect the population. And any ills meted against the population, like excesses that have been mentioned, is that wrong because they're supposed to protect the very people. But at the same time, this is very complicated sometimes where we find the people acting in a manner that is in excess, whether US or UK or Kenya or where, once, even if it is that the people are unarmed and they react in a manner that can threaten national security, the security forces normally react in a way to protect the constitution. And some of these cases are there in Uganda. but this does not condone the excesses. And the issue of activating Somali bodies, I don't know about that. I'm sorry about if there's any delay, maybe, but I've witnessed 2 bodies being buried, and the bodies were clearly received and declared. We declared the number, there are 54. There is nothing that is swept under the carpet, and the next of kin have been informed. There is no secret about it. So if there are burial issues, I'm not sure about what it is, but all those, I think, procedural issues which I may not be answerable to. Thank you so much, Lynn, for giving me additional opportunity.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you, Simon, Francis, Helen, and Miriam. We catch you again some other time, if you will allow, here on Civic Space TV. Go to our social media platforms on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You'll find us there for anything and everything you're looking for in regards to our conversations on the Uganda Diaspora Show. I wish you all the best of the weekend, and God bless.